Someone would have to swim every inch of this lake to find any treasure. That's just what I'm going to do."
"I thought it was too cold," Melody reminded him.
"When it comes to treasure, nothing is too cold," Eddie said. "Let's get started."
"Not so fast,"
rumbled a voice from behind the kids. It was Mr. Jenkins rubbing his beard.
"No one's dipping a single paw into Lake Erin until you learn a thing or two."
Eddie groaned.
"But this is our vacation. We shouldn't have to learn a doggone thing."
Mr. Jenkins rubbed his beard and looked at Eddie. Melody gasped, and Liza closed her eyes, expecting Eddie to become a doggy treat for the wolf-like Mr. Jenkins. But their hairy camp director smiled, showing his eye teeth. They looked like fangs, and goosebumps popped up on Melody's arms.
"Go ahead, then,"
Mr. Jenkins dared Eddie.
"Jump in."
Eddie put his hands on his hips.
"I think I will. I already know how to swim."
With that, Eddie walked to the end of the dock.
"You better test the water first,"
Mr. Jenkins warned.
"Why?"
Eddie asked.
"After all, Miss McFarland jumped right in."
Eddie pointed to the lake where Miss McFarland had been, but now she was nowhere to be seen.
"Hey!"
Liza called out.
"Where did she go?"
"Nobody swims that quietly," Melody whispered.
"Not unless they're very used to the water,"
Howie said slowly.
"Exactly," barked Mr. Jenkins, "which is why you need to learn a few things. Go ahead, Eddie. Stick that big toe of yours in the water."
Eddie shrugged and kerplunked his foot into Lake Erin. But it didn't stay in very long, because Eddie hopped back, splashing water all over the dock.
"Yikes! That water is as cold as the abominable snowman's nose. How can Miss McFarland stand it?"
Mr. Jenkins smiled again.
"I'm glad you asked. Have a seat and I'll teach you a few things about this lake."
The sun was low in the sky by the time Mr. Jenkins finished showing the kids about the wetsuits that would keep them warm in icy waters and how to breathe through the tube when they snorkeled, a kind of diving.
"You will enjoy exploring below the surface of the waters,"
Mr. Jenkins told the kids.
"There are so many fascinating things to see in nature. That's why I decided to make Camp Lone Wolf a sanctuary where animals and plants can live without fear."
"There aren't any interesting animals in these old woods,"
a fat boy named Huey complained. Mr. Jenkins rubbed his beard.
"When animals find out they can be safe and sound at Camp Lone Wolf, they will find their way here."
"What kind of animals?"
Liza asked. Mr. Jenkins spoke softly.
"All kinds of animals."
"Like werewolves?"
Eddie giggled, but he grew quiet when Mr. Jenkins glared at him.
"There will be animals of the forest,"
Mr. Jenkins continued,
"and creatures of the deep."
Howie gulped when he heard the name of his book, but he didn't get a chance to say anything, because just then something made a big splash right in the middle of Lake Erin.